Shadowing. Pre-health shadowing is an online shadowing program where pre-health students can come together and gain insight into their potential health fields. Since pre-health shadowing is open to anybody who's interested, honestly, anybody in the world, this is a great opportunity for students who may have never had the opportunity to meet each other to kind of come together. So everybody go ahead and drop in the chat where you're Zooming from. It's always really exciting to see where all of our students are coming from. Wow, I'm seeing a lot of places. Welcome, everybody. Alrighty. A few housekeeping things before we begin. If you guys would like to receive updates for upcoming sessions, we do send out weekly emails with all of the dates and times, all of the Zoom codes. You guys can also, from our emails, save pre-health shadowing into your Google Calendar, and it'll automatically change into your time zone. So this is really helpful if you're not on the West Coast of the United States. And so a couple things to do so that you guys can join our email list. It is to the link at this bottom left, www.prehealthshadowing.com/join us. And then once you sign up for that, you want to receive your first email. If you didn't get it in your inbox, this is how to fix it. You are going to go spotlight search pre-health shadowing, and you're going to mark our emails as important. Another thing that you could do is save pre-health shadowing as a contact, and that will allow your email to know that you want to surpass junk, surpass spam, and surpass the promotions tab. So please make sure that you guys are doing this if you would like to see our emails. We do also send out, apart from our upcoming sessions, we send out promotion of if we have any free opportunities or resources that might benefit you guys. A little while ago, we had our speaker, Dr. Pineset, who owns a MCAT prep and just pre-med motivation study program, and he actually offered a huge discount to pre-health shadowing students. And so we definitely sent that out. If you guys are looking for more exclusive opportunities or information, be sure to be on our email list. Another update is that we now have closed captioning for all of our live sessions to accommodate students with hearing disability. I have turned it on my end, but I currently don't see it. So please let me know if you guys see it. I will go ahead and double check that after our wrap up, after the startup meeting, and definitely have that on before the session begins if you do not have it. If you are interested in getting published, we have now opened a blog where you guys can submit publications such as articles, reflections, reviews, and success stories for the opportunity to be published on the official pre-health shadowing website. Not only is this great for you guys to just, have reflections or talk about, what went right, because that's just great in general, but it's also a great opportunity to get published and have something nice to present on, an application, resume, CV, LinkedIn profile. You can link this as your article. So if you guys are interested in that, be sure to check out our link at the bottom. This is actually pretty exclusive. We have not opened this up to the general public, so you cannot find this through the menu on our website. This is only accessible through the link. So if you're interested, I will go ahead and leave this up for a few more seconds. Please be sure to either take a picture or write it down. It's www.prehealthshadowing.com/blog-submissions. Alrighty, I'm gonna go ahead and move on. If you guys are interested in helping out with pre-health shadowing, we are 100% remote. You guys can sign up down here at our link. I will go more into depth about, what a volunteer does and stuff like that at the end. But if you're interested in getting involved before we begin, go ahead and check out this link. Our website has been going in and out of failures due to the high influx of students that have recently joined pre-health shadowing. We are really excited to announce to you that we now have over 10,000 students. And so thank you everybody who's been helping us spread the word. Pre-health shadowing is not a secret. We actually do want every single pre-health student in the world to know about us so that we can help them on their journey. Pre-health shadowing is completely free and open to anybody who's interested. in the world. And so what I'm asking you guys to do right now is to please pull out your phones. If you are financially able to send us $1 or $5 or perhaps even 10. This is just to keep our website up and to keep our program free. Pre-health shadowing has vowed to keep our shadowing sessions free for everybody, but since we are a student-led nonprofit organization, we rely solely on the support from the community. And so we are asking you humbly to please visit our website, prehealthshadowing.com/GoFundMe/GFM. And please, whatever you guys can donate, we really do appreciate. If you guys could also post our link on your social media, that would be amazing. Be sure that if you post pre-health shadowing to tag us at pre-health shadowing. We are currently active on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok. So you guys can have a chance to get reposted on our official page. So be sure to tag us. If you're joining us in our live session today, show us your setup while our presenter is presenting today. You know, what are something that really stick out with you? Is there a line that really resonated with you? Like, go ahead and let us know and tag us. With pre-health shadowing, students can take a post-shadowing assessment to receive a certificate that verifies their virtual shadowing hours. And so I will go over how to get your certificate at the end of this session today. So I encourage you guys to take good notes. You guys can drop questions and comments in the chat throughout the entire session, and we'll be sure to ask them during the Q&A portion. So I encourage you guys, if you're curious about anything, now is your time to ask. Without further ado, I would like to welcome to you our speaker for today, Lizbeth Rodriguez. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me. Didn't know people were going to take notes. I'm extra nervous. All right, so let me share screen here.
Perfect.
Okay, can everyone see it all right?
Yep, that's good. Okay.
So as she said, I am an emergency room travel nurse, and yes, I am. My name is Lizbeth Rodriguez. What I noticed is that there actually weren't a lot of nurses in general that had been interviewed on pre-health shadowing before. So I wanted to not only touch on my journey from having absolutely no healthcare experience whatsoever to becoming a travel nurse, but also just how to become a nurse in general. So a little bit about me. I was born in Atlanta, Georgia, to my immigrant parents who came from Cuba and Mexico. I grew up there. It's my home, essentially. We moved here to Los Angeles over in 2011, and I graduated from high school rather early. I finished at, I had just turned 16 since I was homeschooled. We moved around a lot, not like homes, but we just traveled a lot because my father worked for the airlines. So homeschool kind of worked out for us. And since I finished so quickly, I was able to kind of streamline my college experience. I started at a community college that same year when I was 16. So I started in nursing school in 2015 and finished with my associate's degree in nursing in 2017. And then as you can see on the timeline, in March, I sat for NCLEX, and actually the same week that I passed NCLEX, I started working in perioperative nursing. And a few months later, I switched over to ER. And then almost 2 years later to the date, I ended up starting travel nursing. So why nursing? Well, actually, it wasn't my first choice. I originally wanted to do dermatology, but after I started looking into how long it would take me to actually have my first patients, along with the tuition costs that my parents just couldn't handle, even with, extra help and stuff, along with a couple of other factors, one of them being my personality, I am kind of an indecisive person. So my idea of going into dermatology kind of had me panicking. What if I ended up spending all this time and money to become a dermatologist and then ended up not wanting to be in dermatology? So I wanted something that allowed me that flexibility to be indecisive, but in a good way. So nursing has that for me, and it has a lot of things for many people. Multiple entry opportunities. I'll talk on that in the next slide, but nursing is really kind of one of those welcoming professions for anyone. It could be your second degree. It could be something that you've never done before, like me, never having any healthcare experience. I chose nursing. It has steady growth in the healthcare industry. Obviously, right now we're in a pandemic, so nurses are more necessary than ever. We always have been in a shortage of nurses, but now obviously more than ever. And there's so much variety. You're able to not just work in hospitals. Obviously, nurses are mostly seen in hospitals, but you can work in physician's office, you can do home healthcare services, nursing home facilities, outpatient clinics, you can be school nurse, you could even do public health education. And it's a very well-respected profession. Forbes actually has had nurses as the top trusted profession for 4 years running. We outrank doctors, we outrank PAs, we outrank lawyers. We are the top profession. And for 4 years running, I think that says a lot about nursing in general. And what adds to that trust with the community is that direct patient relationship. I found a study that was done in an ICU, and it said that nurses spent about 86% of their time with their patients versus physicians spent 13% of the time with their patients. It's it's kind of a sad reality because, I mean, doctors have a lot of patients that they have to see, but nurses have that one-on-one relationship with the patient that I really wanted to have. So it's also what drew me into nursing. You are the eyes and ears of the patient. You are their advocate. You are the liaison between the patient and the rest of the healthcare team. So the trust in that relationship with your one patient or however many patients is something that is really valued in nursing. Oh my goodness, sorry. And finally, there's opportunity for growth within that field. So even as a nurse, you don't have to stay at bedside forever. It's not the end all. I am probably not going to be an ER nurse forever. I had obviously a path. I did periop nursing, I did ER nursing, and now I'm doing travel nursing. You are able to do so much within just the bubble of nursing. And you can even go back to school, get your master's, become a nurse educator, educate students, work at a nursing school. You could become a nurse informatics person, and you end up working in you work on the programs that nurses use on a day-to-day basis with their patients. Just so much opportunity within the scope of nursing. So like I said, there's multiple entry opportunities, and these are also photos of me in nursing school struggling. I started with my ADN. Like I said, I was 16, so my parents didn't really want me to go to a university at that age. They were kind of clinging on to me a little bit, and they didn't want me to go far from home. So I ended up doing my 2 years at a community college to get my associate's degree. A lot of people also, when they're starting into nursing, they end up doing their bachelor's. So that's at a university, usually about 3 to 4 years. The difference between the associates and the bachelor's, it's a very common question. A lot of people think, why wouldn't I just go for the bachelor's if, I'm going to be headed that way anyways? Well, a lot of people do it because they do the associates because it's a lot more cost effective. You are able to focus on the technical clinical care and enter your employment faster. You're able to start working right away. And a lot of hospitals actually not fund you, but they help with tuition costs to go back and get your bachelor's. So at the end of the day, it seemed like the smartest choice for me. And that's what I did. So once I got my associates and started working, I ended up at a hospital that paid for 50% of my tuition to go back to school and finish my bachelor's. It only took me about 8 or 9 months and I was done. The other part of the program that you could do to enter nursing is the ABSN, or the accelerated BSN. That is from basically starting to finishing in 12 months, 16 months, depending how fast your program is. It's super rigorous. You're not taking any breaks. From start to finish, you end up becoming a nurse at the end of it. And usually it's good for people who have had a bachelor's in another profession. It's easier for them to transition into nursing a lot quicker. It is possible to enter the ABSN program as, let's say, like a high school student, straight out of high school going into one of those. It's just a commitment, essentially. Like, are you willing to commit that much to entering the profession? And then lastly, there's the direct entry MSN. Those are for people who, like, let's say, have a bachelor's in some other degree field, and they want to go back to school for their nursing degree. They want to switch careers. That's a lot better for them. So when I started in nursing, I wanted to become a periop nurse. That was my dream, my goal. It's all I ever talked about in nursing school. I loved the environment. I loved a controlled, cold environment. And just the fact that my day was planned at the time seemed like a really good idea. It was everything I wanted. So with periop nursing, there's 3 steps to perioperative care. There's pre-op, which those nurses, you're starting IVs on the patient, you're making sure that the surgical site is marked. You're kind of doing just like preparing the patient for surgery. You're looking at all the forms, making sure that everything coincides with what the surgeon is going to be doing, that everyone's on the same page. Then once you move into the operating room, or once the patient moves into the operating room, they're dealing with the circulating nurse, along with also the RN first assist and scrub nurses. So at the facility that I was at, I worked at an outpatient surgical center. So we only had circulating nurses and scrub nurses, no RN first assist. Those circulating nurses work outside of the sterile field. So you're kind of like the management of the room. You're keeping an eye on not just the patient, but you're keeping an eye on the sterile field. Is everyone within the sterile field not breaking sterility? Is the patient safe? Is anesthesia doing what they're supposed to be doing? You keep a monitor on everybody, and you're essentially just the management team. The RN first assist and the scrub nurses work within the surgical field. They're the ones that, hand tools to the surgeon. They make sure everything is good within the surgical field. So they really rely heavily on the circulating nurse to know what they're doing to make sure that everything is coinciding perfectly. And then once the patient moves on out into the PACU recovery room, the post-operative side, that's where I was working a lot of the times. And I was so tired, clearly by the photo. At the surgical outpatient facility that I worked at, we would bust out like 30 to 45 patients in a 10-hour period. So the surgeon was moving from operating room to operating room and just doing his job, finishing it up really quickly. And all of those patients would come to our PACU quite quickly. The good thing about outpatient surgical centers, though, is that those patients, they wake up from anesthesia and they're able to go home. So it's a rather quick recovery process. They're usually only there for about an hour to an hour and a half. Then the nurse, we do our education, make sure that they know exactly what they're supposed to be doing when they get home, how they care for themselves, and we're able to just treat their pain as they're in the recovery room with us, and making sure that everything is stable, that they don't end up with any complications from anesthesia. But so that being said, most of what goes on here in the perioperative nursing world is very routine. These surgery days are planned weeks in advance. I know which patient we're going to start with and which patient we're going to end with. And there's hardly any room for error, which is a good thing. That's what's supposed to happen in perioperative nursing in that world. But personally, I kind of wanted a faster pace. And like I said, I'm rather indecisive, and nursing lends itself to that. I thought this was my world, but once I was in it for a little bit, I realized I wanted something different. And at the end of the day, I also was looking into the long-term goals. I wanted to eventually do nursing education. And most of those positions, professions require that the nurse educator have some critical care experience. So for critical care, I had to decide between ICU and ER. So the difference between ICU and ER is similar, but at the same time, night and day. It's this long running joke that ICU and ER are just rivals. We have this rivalry between us because one is just chaotic, messy, just a little bit of everything, and the other one is very methodical. And that's true, but we kind of like love to hate each other. So the difference between ER and ICU is the work style. ER has, like I said, chaotic organization or lack thereof organization. We thrive in it. We thrive in that disorganization, and ICU patients are critically ill. They need nurses that are organized, that plan from start to finish. And in the ER, we rely a lot on teamwork and just kind of that gut sense of intuition, versus in the ICU, the patients, the nurses, they can't really rely on their gut intuition. They have to know what's going on with their patient and know from start to finish what they're going to be doing. So it's very methodical, versus, like I said, in the ER, we're very broad. We're less focused on specificities. Yeah, that's a word, I think. And we're more focused on big picture things. And for the goals of care, like I said, ER, since we're focused on big picture, our goal is just to keep the patient alive. We're very focused on patchwork. Patient came in for A, we're going to fix A. We're not going to look at B through Z. Versus ICU, they're focused on every bit of the patient from head to toe and how to treat them and get them home. Also, one big thing that sort of adds to the rivalry too is just the personality type that is required for these units. ER is, the nurse is very adaptable. They prefer the chaos. They're able to just mentally prioritize what they need to do, versus an ICU nurse is kind of a type A person. They like things a certain way. They like things planned. And if you kind of deviate from that plan, it throws off their whole system. But at the end of the day, ER is not critical care, sadly. Even though we see a lot of critically ill patients, we just don't spend enough time with them to be considered part of the critical care umbrella. And even though long-term wise, I may not be able to, I might have to switch over to ICU to complete with like my goals of nurse education and that. But for now, my personality really fit in with the ER, and that's what I ended up going with. So this slide is kind of just for fun. Like I said, there's a huge rivalry between the ICU and the ER, and everyone knows it. We're so different, but we just, like I said, kind of love to hate each other. So I ended up going with ER nursing. I loved it. I thrived in it. It's fast paced. It's noisy. It's always an adrenaline rush every single day. We have to be calm under pressure, and we don't have time to, like the ICU, think methodically. We don't have time to make things pretty. It's kind of like the Rihanna, I don't know if you saw it, but the Rihanna meme on the last slide, where she saw the central line and was like, what is this? Because that's what we do in the ER. We just kind of slap things on and make sure that it works. We just want it to work and make sure that the patient stays alive. And that being said, it's never the same day twice. Being in the ER never goes as planned. From the moment you start huddle, you cannot anticipate what is going to happen that day. You get all kinds of patients coming through of all different acuities. You could have a patient who comes in as a GSW, a gunshot wound patient, come in, and just the very next second have a full arrest come in. And maybe a few moments after that, have a patient in respiratory distress. And all of this could be also happening simultaneously. But you as the nurse have to then prioritize who gets your attention first and when. And this is all happening too between Jimmy, who broke his arm falling off of the bike, and grandma who broke her hip. So you have just a wide range of patients. And that's why the ER nurse has to have this sort of chaotic brain that is able to, like I said, prioritize everything. And in the words of my old manager, ER is a team sport. Since it's so chaotic, we rely so much on the team. With all those situations that I said, there's 5, 6 patients that are all high priority and they all need to see you now. That's when you rely on your team. We all understand in the ER that when we see a critically ill patient passing by, we follow them. We go help the nurse that is accepting that patient. We go make sure that while she's or they are handling that new patient, that we're handling their other patients, or we're helping them bring whatever they need to the room to take care of that patient that they're getting now. It's a team sport. You really cannot be a singular isolative person in the ER. And I think that's why I also thrived in it so much. You become such a family when you are under these high intensity, high stress situations altogether. So a lot of the responsibilities just from start to finish are stressful. You start with triage, and in triage, when you're accepting your patients or seeing the patients that first come into the ER, you're going through your ABCs, your airway, breathing, circulation, and you're seeing who needs immediate care versus who can wait a little bit, and kind of moving them around the ER as necessary by their prioritization. And since you're not so focused, like I said, on B through Z, but mostly on A, you do focus assessments. We learned head to toe assessments in nursing school, but in the ER, I think I've only done them once or twice, just because you focus on the chief complaint and you're focused on why that patient is here now, and you patch that. And once you're able to patch that, then you can move on to the rest of the systems. And another thing that drew me to ER nursing is just how autonomous these nurses are. For example, with titrating medications, most units require an order from a physician. They have to communicate every step of the way with the physician of what they're going to do, what they want to do with the patient. Versus in the ER, a lot of those decisions are on you. The ER physician has to focus on the entire ER. And you obviously, like that one study showed, you spend the most time with the patient. You see them ebbing and flowing in their health. So you have to make quick actions and decisions that will directly affect your patient in that moment. So like I said, titrating medications, most places need an order for that, but ER nurses, we just do them. We titrate medications as we need based on the patient's condition that we see in front of us. And of course, like going and communicating to the physician of what's going on. And lastly, we also have to transfer our patients to their units of where they're going for continuity of care. The problem with that now is that due to the pandemic, there's not a lot of beds. And even before the pandemic, we would end up with situations where the hospital was full. So we would have to board patients. So for ER nurses boarding patients, after about 2 to 4 hours of them being in the ER, we have to start carrying out their admitting orders. Now that starts to get a little difficult when we've had patients waiting 4 or 5 days for a bed up in the hospital. It gets even more difficult when it's an ICU patient that's been waiting 4 or 5 days for a bed up in the ICU. Because like I said before, ER nurses are not trained to handle that long-term care. So we can only do so much when it comes to boarding patients. And now during the pandemic, it's become a lot more difficult. And of course, like the safety of patients has come into question. So after I was in ER nursing for about a year and a half, I loved it and I didn't want to leave it, but I also wanted to have this work-life balance back. I was at a point where I was pretty much being defined by my job. It was go to work, come home, sleep, do it all over again. And I didn't really like that. I wanted to take back my life essentially. And travel nursing was the next step for me. I ended up meeting a lot of nurses in the ER that would come in as travel nurses, and I would pick their brains, and they seemed to have life figured out, and I wanted that. So for travel nurses, what do? We fill the gaps in staffing needs at different hospitals. If a hospital is having problems with staffing based on, let's say a lot of nurses ended up on a strike. Let's say a lot of nurses quit, like right now, due to the pandemic. Travel nurses come in and help fill that gap. And these are a couple of the points of what drew me to travel nursing. Like I said, that work-life balance. I'm able to tell them when I want to work. And that was so liberating to be able to not just do my 3 days when my employer told me they needed me to work, but I was able to tell my agencies, I want to work on only Tuesday next week. I have a busy week. Okay, they'll only call me on Tuesday. I want to work on Monday, Wednesday, Friday next week. I'm kind of busy on Thursday. Okay, they'll only call me on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I want to take a month off, which is what I'm doing right now. No one is going to call me until my month is over. And that is just, like I said, so liberating to be able to have that independence in your work-life balance, on top of also being well compensated. So it's no secret that travel nurses make much more money than staff nurses. It's actually quite a sad reality, because rather than paying their own staff nurses what they're paying a travel nurse to come in and help with, the employers choose to pay a travel nurse double, triple, quadruple what their staff nurses are making just to come and help, which shows how desperate they are. But of course, they could have just paid their own staff nurses. But with travel nursing, you have so much more opportunities as well. You have this exposure to all kinds of different environments. Personally, my first travel assignment, I ended up at a trauma hospital. I had never worked in trauma before. I worked at like a trauma 3 hospital. So we didn't really see a lot of trauma unless it was kind of just thrusted upon us. And then we had to move it to a different hospital. But when I worked at the trauma hospital, we handled everything. The traumas came to us on purpose. And that was really nice to be able to experience that, because I had never been able to do that before. And then after that, I went to a different hospital. It was a stroke center. So just being able to bounce around and see what exactly it was that I wanted to do long-term is so beneficial to me, because again, I'm a very indecisive person. So just being able to experience this, back away, experience that, back away, experience this, back away, and then decide which one I want to eventually go with long-term is so invaluable. Like, you can only learn so much by someone telling you what it's like. It's so much better to just go and experience it. And of course, one of the benefits of travel nursing is that you are fulfilling the needs in critically underserved areas. So these, like I said, you go and fill the gaps in places that really, really need you. So even though nursing as a whole is a very fulfilling job, you're going even more so. You're going the extra mile, and you're constantly helping where there's a great need. Okay, so there's different types of travel nursing, which I didn't know about. I thought that I was going to have to end up in like Alaska for 13 weeks or New York for 13 weeks, and that's what travel nursing was. But I was wrong. There's so much more to it. With travel nursing, you can do one of two things. You can do local travel, which is within 50 miles of your home address. And that's what I do. I didn't want to travel out of state just yet because I felt not ready, but I have a family and I didn't want to uproot us for 13 weeks on a whim. I didn't know if this was going to be something that I stuck with long term. So this is what I'm doing now, local travel. And it's been so nice because I'm able to have that independence, but also come home at the end of the day. And one of the things that travel nursing, another reason why we're so well compensated is because we have a tax break because we're traveling. You end up with a housing stipend, you end up with a tax break because you're considered to be a traveler. You go to different areas, different states. So you have to be compensated for it. With local travel, you typically don't get that housing stipend or you don't get the tax break. But the good thing is that in areas with high traffic, New York, maybe Miami, but definitely Los Angeles, here I'm able to label myself as a traveler because we have so much traffic. So the traffic allows me to still get the housing stipend and my my tax break. And then there's true travel, which is going more than 50 miles away from your home address. And this is typically like what people know of when it comes to travel nursing. Travel nurses going all across the US and serving where there's a need and then going somewhere else and then just traveling all over. And one day I'll do this. But the thing that I like about true travel, or what I've seen is probably a little beneficial, is that if you go with a travel buddy, it's so much nicer. Even me, like doing local travel, I have my little travel buddy. We go to hospitals together. And if you were a true traveler and going to a different state, it's nice to go with a buddy because you end up pocketing most of your housing stipend because you're covering the rent together. As a local travel, obviously I don't really need that housing stipend, but what's nice about having a buddy is that I'm never alone. One thing that is, I guess, a downside to travel nursing is that you essentially end up at a new school, new job every 3 months. You don't know anybody. You have to relearn your ABCs essentially. And it can get a little nerve-wracking and at the same time very lonely. So it's nice to have someone or that to be that familiar face to kind of get together at the end of the day and be like, oh my gosh, this was so hard. The supply room, here's the medicine room, here's your computer. Okay, get to work. And that's it. With crisis contracts, that is what we're seeing a lot of right now with the pandemic. This is sort of an all hands on deck situation, and the hospitals are desperate, which is why they offer a lot more money. So, like I said, travel nurses are already pretty well compensated, but with crisis contracts, they know that you're going to get worked so hard every single day, and you work for your money. What we've seen basically is anything upwards of 10,000 a week, 12,000 a week for a travel nurse to come in. But you're working for that money, like I said. It's not going to be an easy situation. A lot of people have been accepting crisis contracts during this pandemic, thinking that it's kind of like a easy, hey, I'm going to pocket 12K and just kind of like do nursing. Like, no, like it's going to be very, very difficult, especially now with the pandemic. It's been very, very difficult to accept these crisis contracts. It takes a lot out of you. But of course, like I said, since it's an all hands on deck situation, a lot of the agencies are not sticking to their 1 to 2 years rule, essentially, for experience. They're taking nurses with as little as 6 months of experience, which then brings into question, like, of course, the safety of the patient, but it's just how desperate they've been. They need people to come. So my plan for travel nursing was kind of at the end of 2019. I wanted to transition with 2020 into my new light at the end of the tunnel position of travel nursing. I was so excited to start it. I had everything kind of in plan. I was talking to agencies. I had things going for me. And then, of course, 2020 happened and my plan just went out the window. So my transition into travel nursing was kind of one of those jump starts, hit the ground running sort of thing. I started seeing all these COVID contracts pop up. And even though I was hesitant to start travel nursing because just of the unknown, like I was scared, I hadn't had any friends start travel nursing before. So I was kind of venturing into this, like I said, unknown. And I had one foot out the door, but still just not wanting to do it. And COVID sort of pushed me to do it. There were these contracts popping up, and I kind of had this moment where I realized if I don't do it now, I'm probably never going to do it. And nursing during COVID, during the pandemic, has been just like nothing else we've ever seen before. It's a whirlwind. It's those things that they talk to you about in school. There's always a chapter on it in the book, Pandemic Nursing, or what it was like, because we'd never lived it. But now having my book come to life and having to be in it has I've never prepared for this. No one was prepared for this. At the very beginning, when news of the pandemic started trickling in, at first, there were no masks even allowed. We weren't allowed to wear them because it would incite fear in the patients. We only had a few questions to ask in triage about where have you traveled from? If they traveled recently, it was suspicious, but nothing was ingrained. It was still very unknown to us. And then the middle photo, I took that photo because I kind of knew that this was going to shift things. That shift was literally the shift from hell for us at the hospital that I was at. We had a quiet morning, an eerily quiet morning, because since everything had shut down, we weren't really seeing patients unless it was an emergency. So we had days where there really wasn't a lot going on in the ER, but all in the matter of like 2 hours, we ended up intubating about 8 patients and then coding another 2. And then this horde of people with respiratory complaints came in all of a sudden, and we were not ready. So I took this photo not just as like a pee break selfie, but because I kind of knew in my mind that I wanted to commemorate the moment where everything just blew up. After that, we ended up with, of course, like the PPE shortages. At the hospital where I was at, in the photo on the right, those gowns that we were wearing, we ended up having very little of them. So we had to wipe them down in between patients and then just put them in our pockets because that was your gown for the day. And then at one point, we ended up with no gowns. So we had to use patient gowns for isolation. And it looked kind of ridiculous seeing all these nurses in patient gowns walking around, but it's what the situation called for. And of course, the N95s became a big issue. We went from having one for the whole week to one for 2 weeks to one for the month to one until it broke and then you needed a new one. And of course, they didn't like us to bring stuff from home because it is not hospital approved. But at this point, nothing is approved. So it was a lot to handle at the beginning. And that photo on the left is a friend of mine. She's in the tent that we set up outside the hospital to handle the influx of patients that were coming in. To show how not ready we were for this, that tent was built in all of a day when we started getting like that horde of patients. And that tent fell twice. It was built so janky because we were just trying to handle what was going on, and we were handling it very poorly because on top of it being an inner city hospital that had very little resources to begin with, we were now thrusted into this situation where we needed to have an abundance of resources on top of the issues that we already had, and we couldn't keep up with it. So we lost a lot of nurses due to staffing. They quit because they felt unsafe. They were unsure if they wanted to go home and possibly expose their family members. They were completely burnt out because of the situations that we were facing. And to add insult to injury, a lot of times we wouldn't even get hazard pay. It was 1 week yes, 1 week no, sometimes maybe. And we were just feeling as if we were fighting COVID 1 second while fighting administration for our own safety the next, and then going back and forth. So it was a really difficult time to be a nurse, but it brought to light a lot of issues that healthcare has. And I'm in a way thankful because we're able to see all the problems that there is in nurse safety, healthcare in general. And at least now we can move on or continue on, because obviously we're still in it, but make adjustments and make changes for the better. So these are some of the lovely people that I've met through travel nursing. Has it been difficult to be a travel nurse during the pandemic? Absolutely. Like I mentioned, there's so many things that have gone wrong. But do I regret any of it? No, not one bit. I love the path that I've taken, and even the pandemic being this huge bump in the road, this road has led me to this point where I feel sure of myself as a nurse and I'm able to meet all of these lovely people and learn from them. Being a travel nurse has been the most invaluable experience ever. I'm able to take away so much from each of my assignments and just grow from it exponentially. I completely love nursing. I love the thrill of ER nursing. I love the days where my adrenaline gets going. I love the days even when I feel defeated at the end of it, because I know that those days are the days that I learned the most on my shift. And everywhere I've gone during my travel nursing days have been, the units have welcomed me with open arms. It's felt like I've been there for years. And I feel like that says a lot about ER nursing in general. Like I said, we're a team. So every time we have a new member of the team come in, we welcome them because we know we're going to need each other during that shift. So with nursing, I love all of it. I love the good, I love the bad, I love the ugly, and I do not regret it at all. I would choose nursing time and time again. And that's it. This was in one of my travel assignments.
All right, thank you so much. That was a wonderful presentation, and we really appreciate that. So right now we're gonna dive into questions. We have a lot of questions. They were very active in the chat, so thank you, you guys. So our first question is going to be, how do you mentally and emotionally prepare yourself for the chaos? Oh, I'm so sorry. The questions just disappeared when you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's not your fault. Let me just go back to it real quick. How do you mentally and emotionally prepare yourself for the chaos, the fast-paced environment of the ER while making sure that you focus enough to provide the best possible care for your patients?
So I think preparing for just the job in general really starts from home. I have a very calm and loving environment here at my home with my husband and my 3 cats and all my plants. So I think dealing with the chaos at work, it does take an emotional toll on you. Like, I'm not gonna lie, it does get to you. And certain shifts you go home and just cry in your car. But coming home and then resetting, having a good work-life balance is what helps me come back to work refueled and ready to do it all over again. You do get beat up, but it's about how you get up again to handle the next shift.
Thank you so much. Another student question that we had is, what did you do to help with finances during nursing school?
So thankfully, my parents, since we did community college, like, I guess full disclaimer, I think from start to finish, it cost my parents about $9,000 total from like prereqs and everything, because I paced it. And also I didn't qualify for financial aid, but I also took a quick summer job to kind of help my parents along the way with the costs. I only took the job during summer breaks or winter breaks though, because my parents were lovingly enough wanting me to focus on school during semesters. So I would leave the job. I worked at a nursing home, so I would leave the job during my semesters, and they understood that I needed to take the time off.
Thank you. So how long would you recommend working in a stationary place before like traveling post-school?
So like I said, a lot of agencies won't even allow you to leave. Wait, I'm sorry, hold on. Was the question about going into travel nursing or just leaving in general, like going to a new unit?
For travel nursing. Like,
Oh, okay, sorry. So most agencies won't accept you unless you have a year to 2 years experience, just like I said, for safety, because you can't, it's very difficult to be a new nurse learning the ropes of nursing in general and then get thrown into a new situation every 13 weeks. So that being said, it depends on everybody. It might be at the year mark that you feel ready. It might be at the 2-year mark that you feel ready. It might be at the 10-year mark that you feel ready. It just depends on each person. But I think one major question that everyone should ask themselves before going into travel nursing is, are you able to take care of the sickest patient without drowning? Are you able to take care of them on your own? Because even though ER is a team sport, a lot of the times you might be alone in a new assignment, having to pick up the pieces of this crashing patient. And you need to feel confident in your abilities to do that solo.
Thank you. The next question is, can you talk a little bit more about the social and relational aspects of travel nursing?
So nursing in general is like this big family. And I feel like within that family, we have like our subsets of cousins. Each unit is like its own little set of cousins. And we all understand the relationship between each other. And we dynamically love each other like this big family. With travel nursing, I have met other travelers through my assignments, and we act as if we've known each other our whole lives. I think it also depends on the person as well. You have to be very open to meeting new people, and you have to be sort of welcoming yourself. Introduce yourself to people, put yourself out there, because it'll make the transition into your unit a lot easier. So for nursing, I feel like everyone is very welcoming and we all have a mutual respect for each other. But at the same time, it also depends on your personality. Like, are you willing to put yourself out there and meet a whole new set of people every 13 weeks?
thank you. So what is the nurse's role in trauma care? In other words, where do nurses stop and physicians begin, and vice versa?
So for trauma care specifically, it's kind of a dance. Like, we're working all together at the same time. Physicians will be assessing the patient while nurses are moving the patient. And physicians will be letting us know what to start on the patient, what medications to get, what to do. And nurses carry out the orders, go get it, come bring it, start it on the patient. So like I said, it's a very orchestrated dance. The physicians are doing their position as we're doing ours. And I guess where it would stop is obviously ordering things. So nurses do not order things for the patient. Physicians are the ones that order orders for the patient. We just carry them out.
Interesting, thank you. The next question is, can you talk a little bit about the transition to travel nursing?
So my transition, or I think a transition in general into it, I started doing both. So both in meaning that I stuck with my staff position as a per diem employee. So I was working 1 day a week at the staff position while then working as a travel nurse at my first hospital. I did that because I was kind of scared to let go of my staff job. I was scared that I might not like travel nursing, and if I didn't like it, then I would at least have something to fall back on. I ended up quitting my staff position at my third week on the travel nurse position because I just loved it so much. And I knew that I was never going to go back to staffing, or at least not in the foreseeable future. So for the transition, you obviously have to speak to agencies. You have to find an agency that you feel works right for you and that works well with your area of expertise, like ER, ICU, med surge. But in terms of finding an agency that's right for you, finding a recruiter that's right for you, that's very individual. It depends on what your needs are as a nurse. I love this dog.
So earlier you mentioned a travel buddy. Can you talk more about what you meant by that?
So I don't know if he's here, but my travel buddy's Melvin. So Melvin and I, we go to hospitals together, meaning we enter a contract at the same time. So that way we have each other throughout the process. We're just friends who we worked together at the staff position, and we both decided to start travel nursing at the same time at the same place. So we kind of dubbed each other travel buddies. So like I said, that travel buddy is just a nice feeling of home. Like you have somebody to turn to at the end of the day that makes you feel good, that you just have this comfort with, because it's, like I said, very lonely when you are at a new position and you don't know anybody and you're very confused. You sometimes are learning a new charting system and it can be very overwhelming. But having that one person to turn to in the middle of a shift and just be like, is very nice.
That's great. Thank you. The next steps is, the next question is, do you have any advice for taking the TEAS test?
The TEAS, oh, it's been a really long time since I took the TEAS. Honestly, so what I did for the TEAS is I got one of those books. I cannot remember the book, but I think it literally said TEAS 101. And that's the book that I studied from start to finish. When I took the TEAS, I remember there being a lot of questions that in my mind, I was like, oh, what does this have to do with my nursing career? It was asking me about like cumulus clouds and science questions that had absolutely nothing to do with nursing. But it's kind of one of those just all-encompassing tests that you need to know.
Okay, it looks like we froze. We're going to give a couple seconds. If our speaker does drop, we will be having her come back on. Thank you guys for understanding. As you know, remote learning and remote interaction has taken a big change from when, just with Wi-Fi and all of this stuff. So I appreciate you guys being patient. While you guys are here and while we're waiting for a speaker, I do want to tell you guys about some opportunities that we have. We currently have a fundraiser that will be going out for our students. So this is a social media fundraiser where you guys will post a bingo board, and we will be able to raise money for pre-health shadowing that way. And so if you guys are interested in signing up for a volunteer, you guys can do so on our website, www.prehealthshadowing.com/volunteer. So what was the last question we were on?
Oh, I think we were on the TEAS, but point being, I focused on math and science because I figured that's what we would need in nursing. So it seemed to help. I passed. Freeze again?
Yes, you're back.
I don't know what's going on. But anyways, I passed the T's. Let's move on.
Okay, wonderful. Congrats on passing the T's. So do you know the logistics of traveling out of state, like with the nursing license? And do you have to be certified in the state you are going to?
So most recruiters or agencies will handle that for you. Once you accept the position in whatever state you're going to, if it's a good recruiter and agency, they'll aid you with the process, or they should, because especially if it's your first time, you kind of need that hand holding to get you started. And like I said, a good agency will set you up for success.
Thank you. The next question is, what was your favorite clinical rotation as an undergrad? We'll ask her to rejoin with her phone when she comes back.
So again, I can just go ahead. I have some more announcements for you guys. Be sure to take note of everything that you're hearing today. I know that you guys, a lot of you are taking notes, which is awesome. I encourage you to save your notes and save your certificates all in one spot. One thing that one of our team members does is have just a Google Docs and pastes the PDF of the saved certificates, and then does a short summary of what they learned, as well as any insight, anything that they're going to be taking to going forward. And it's really helpful for when you are starting your application process. When you're doing your personal statement, your activities, you kind of have a better idea, what was I thinking at this time? What did I actually learn, instead of trying to recall from a year or two back.
So real quick, I'm going to try and join with my phone since something is going on with my computer. I don't know what. So
Okay,
be right back.
sounds good. Thank you.
So for me, my favorite was the OR, because as an undergrad, that's what I wanted to do. That's what I was really convinced was my calling. And I used that time during my clinical rotation to just network like crazy. That's how I got my first job. And that's how I was able to start so quickly in the position that I did. The same week I finished my NCLEX, I was starting to work, because during that rotation, I talked with the surgeons, the staff, and gave them all of my information. So that way, once I finished school, I was able to call all of those contacts and see if I could have a position, which I ended up having.
Thank you for that. So what helped you most when it came to applying nursing school?
So for applying to nursing school, with the nursing school that I was at, they didn't have a wait list. So that was very beneficial because I was able to just get right into it. But with applying, I think what set myself out is I tried to have moments like situations like this. I had shadowing opportunities. I had worked in the nursing home for a little bit. So I had a little bit of experience to kind of set me apart from the rest, and used that also with volunteering opportunities. I did a couple of volunteering sessions at a local hospital to try and get into the nursing school, and also to see if healthcare was for me. So I did maybe like 3 days at a local hospital.
Thank you. The next question is, did you work through nursing school? And if so, how did you manage your time and schedule?
So, like I said, I worked only through the breaks because my parents wanted me to focus on nursing school while I was in school. So I worked at a nursing home that was very, very understanding of my situation, and they wanted me to really thrive in nursing, and they wanted to also have me reach the goal. So they understood that when I was in my semesters that I was going to leave for about 2-3 months, and then I'd come back and work a couple weeks. So I was thankful to find a position that was very lenient in that way. But for balancing it with school, I took a couple of classes during that time, during those breaks. So managing school and working and life at the same time, I just really had to be rigid with my scheduling and not allow myself to essentially let my guard down and become too complacent with, oh, I'll just read this later. Like, no, I would have to sit and read now, because especially knowing myself, I knew I wasn't going to read it later.
I definitely feel that. So, how do you deal with adapting to new rules and regulations of different hospitals, also making relations with other nursing staff?
So a lot of hospitals have very, very similar policies. So that was something that benefited me in that sense. You kind of have this set of ground rules that are just go across the board. Hospitals wherever follow those set of ground rules. So it was, in a way, it's easy to adapt from hospital to hospital, but of course each hospital has their specific policies and their politics. So as someone coming in for just a short period of time, what I would do is immediately start asking, okay, you want me to do XYZ? How do you guys here like this done? How does administration like this done? Is this allowed? Is this allowed? So you get a feel for the land. And certain things, certain policies, you're never going to be able to learn it all. So you just have to learn them as you are confronted with them. And most people understand that you're a traveler, so they sort of allow some leniency towards you, and they don't expect you to know everything.
Definitely. Thank you. The next question is, what are some things you recommend considering when a person is struggling to choose between becoming a nurse practitioner and a physician?
So I think, well, personally, I love this one quote that everyone always mentions, or what I hear a lot very often with nurse practitioners, is that they have the heart of the nurse and the mind of a doctor. With nurse practitioners, I feel like if you go through nursing school, you're obviously taught to have that heart of a nurse, or to focus on that patient relationship. And you don't always have that from what I've seen as a physician, because they are just so knowledgeable and they have so much that they have to learn. Sometimes that patient relationship is sort of lost. And like in that one ICU study that I showed, they spend a lot less time with the patients. So they don't really get to have that relationship. And sometimes it shows in sort of a lack of empathy towards the patients. And personally, I have had much better experiences in the workplace with nurse practitioners really showing a true care for the patients versus a physician.
Thank you. So, what are some things you recommend doing in regards to some sort of experience before going into nursing school?
So kind of what I mentioned before of shadowing a nurse, or if the hospital allows it. Of course, right now, the pandemic kind of makes that a little bit difficult, but things like this, pre-health shadowing, hearing experiences from different nurses, I think is really valuable to a student who's trying to decide whether this is right for them. You're able to kind of get into the mindset of what your day will be like. And if you're able to shadow a nurse in an actual healthcare facility, I think that would also be just the most valuable thing that you could do, because you're able to really see what your job would be like and see if that's right for you.
Great. Thank you. The next question is, how do you manage your stress working through a pandemic?
So like I mentioned, that work-life balance is super important. The pandemic has not been any different in terms of what I do to try and de-stress at home. It has definitely made it a little more difficult just because the pandemic has, it's so complex in all of the issues and stresses that it brings on all of us. So personally, what I do is I've been taking up new hobbies, got new plants. I spend more time off my phone, off of social media. I detox from it because especially right now, a lot of what we see on social media is just like a reflection of what we see at work. So sometimes I also try to disconnect from conversations that are about work. A lot of people, when I call them, will ask me, the first thing they ask me, so how's it going at work with the pandemic? How's it going with this? How are the numbers going up? I choose not to talk about it when I'm outside of work to avoid bringing that stress home.
Thank you for that. So is traveling nursing difficult in terms of salary, and how much is the pay for a travel nurse? And is there like a difference in pay when you travel to different places?
So there is a difference in terms of the contracts. So for example, I'll be looking at my email and my agency will send me a very long list of different contracts available, different rates, different locations, and you're able to pick and choose what you want to do. If you want to stick to the high paying contracts, you can do that. You can stick to only those. Or if you want to stay somewhere close to home, you can choose that as well and choose those. So I think your contracts are very, like I said, it's very adapt to you, what you want to get out of travel nursing. For me, it's to stick close to home and to also be well compensated for my work that I'm doing. So I get that through travel nursing. The pay rates range. It ranges on so many levels with so many factors. And it goes up sometimes with like extra days of work that you're expected to do. It goes up with, like I said, the crisis, the amount of work that you're expected to do. But really you should choose contracts that benefit you.
Thank you. The next question is, in your opinion, are there any major faults that the U.S. healthcare has?
I think one is definitely, how I said, just the time that physicians spend with their patients. I think that that's a very big one. We don't put nearly enough effort into focusing on the patient as much as I would personally like to. I feel like we see people as numbers now versus actual people in the beds. And a lot of times it's the Black and people of color that are at the butt end of that. They're often neglected in the ER or viewed as drug seekers in certain situations. And I feel like as nurses, it's our job to advocate for those patients and continue to be that bridge to help aid the healthcare community out of this terrible like stigma that we have towards the Black and people of color in the community. Another issue that I feel like I see with just healthcare in general is, I mean, a big one is health insurance, but I don't know nearly enough about it to get into it. But I've seen people get turned away just because of the health insurance. We send them to different hospitals when they need we need life-saving care on them, but they don't have the right health insurance. And I think that that's just the dumbest thing ever.
Completely agree. So is there a sex disopportunity within the nursing field, and what do you think about it?
By sex disopportunity, do they mean like for like male and female nurses?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So I think it's one of those I think it's one of those things that now you see so many male nurses, or nurses as they like to be called sometimes. So, and I think it's fantastic. It also depends on the unit that you go to work to, because in the ER, or in a lot of the critical care units as well, you see a lot more males as nurses. And I think that's a great environment to be in. And that's also another reason why I was drawn to the ER, because there's such a diversity in the people, the different sexes, and just everyone who gets together to form this little chaotic family that we love so much. In certain units, there are definitely, it's more female dominated. Just to name one that I know of, like L&D, labor and delivery. It's a lot more female dominated. I would say I see very little males in that field, but for ER, ICU, I know so many males that go directly into those fields. So I think even though it is still a very female based profession, or female heavy profession, there is room for the men.
Great, thank you. The next question is, in your opinion, have hospitals done anything to try and fix the nurse shortage?
So to fix the nurse shortage, I mean, oof, that's a heavy question. Okay, they definitely have not been paying staff nurses enough to incentivize more nurses to come in. And then that big paycheck of incentive is then thrown out to travel nurses, but that's not necessarily bringing new nurses into the field. So I think hospitals specifically, if they were more willing to allow students to come and see what nursing is all about, or to see what healthcare is all about, that would incentivize new nurses to enter the profession. Because I think right now, the nurses that are here to stay, but what our focus should be are the new nurses coming in. We need more nurses, and there's always going to be a nursing shortage. So we need students like all of you to enter the profession, enter the ranks, and join us.
Hopefully we do get some future nurses over here. So at this moment, we are going to start wrapping up. So do you have any last minute advice that you wanted to tell us?
I mean, I think nursing is one of those professions that sort of gets looked down upon, in a sense that it's not held it to the highest caliber as like physicians or PAs or NPs. Bedside nursing is kind of viewed down upon. So I think you guys here having these sessions and highlighting bedside nursing, highlighting ER nursing, travel nursing is fantastic, because we need more of these nurses. And I love being able to show that nursing can be of the highest caliber and not just what people think we are.
Thank you so much, Lizbeth. That was an amazing presentation. We're so honored to have hosted you today. Thank you so much for joining us and spending your time with us here today. For all of my students, I'd like to draw your attention over to my wrap-up presentation. This will go over how to get your certificate and your verified virtual shadowing hours, so stick around to hear about that. Really quickly, I encourage you all, like I said earlier, to write little notes to yourself, have a little reflection time. What did you learn today? What resonated with you? What are 3 takeaways that you might take with you on your journey as you continue? This is not mandatory. This is just, from student to student. You're going to be writing your personal statements later when you're applying to nursing school, med school, PA school, whatever you may be doing. And so this is going to be very, very helpful if that's something that you're interested in. If you are interested in getting published, we are taking submissions. So you can visit our website, www.prehealthshadowing.com/blog submissions. You can submit articles, reflections, reviews, and success stories for the opportunity to be published on our website. This is something that looks amazing on any resumes, applications, CVs, and LinkedIn profiles. So if you guys are interested, be sure to check out this link. Like I said earlier, this is not made available to the public yet, so you cannot find this through our website. You have to type in the URL directly. So I'll give you guys a moment. I'll have somebody send it in the chat, please. www.prehealthshadowing.com/blog submissions. If you are interested in joining our student team, Pre-Health Shadowing is a student-based, student-led nonprofit organization where we work 100% remotely with each other with the opportunity to network with professionals and like-minded students to gain experience not only in healthcare, but also in potentially marketing, business, data analysis, IT, anything like that. If you're interested, be sure to apply. You can apply on our website. But we understand you guys are all pre-health students and might be super busy with everything that you have going on. So if you'd still like to get involved but might not have the time, that is totally okay. We do have volunteer opportunities that are great because it's on your own time. So if you have maybe 3 hours this week and 6 hours next week, that's totally fine. If you only have, 3 o'clock in the morning when you're available to help out, we will love to have you join us at 3 o'clock in the morning. So it's on your own time. You can set your own schedule, work your own hours. You can sign up on our website, www.prehealthshadowing.com/volunteer. This is a different QR code that I presented from the beginning. This is actually to join our fundraising team. So if you guys scan this, instead of donating money, if you are financially unable to donate money to us right now, we completely understand. We are in a global pandemic. And so, it's difficult. We encourage everybody in this session to scan this QR code and join our fundraising team and send it out to 5 people. If you joined this live session today, I humbly ask you to send this to 5 people. We are struggling to keep our website up. So anything that you guys can share and post on your stories is helpful. You guys will actually get your own link when you sign up to join our fundraising team. You'll get a personalized link, and then you can track how much money you've raised for pre-health shadowing. If you raise a lot of money, that's something that's amazing and something that you can talk about later. So please, I cannot stress this enough. Please help us out. You can join our GoFundMe team by doing the slug prehealthshadowing.com/GFM-team. You guys can also get volunteering hours for sharing this GoFundMe link. For every 15 shares, you get 1 hour of volunteering. So if you're interested in that, be sure to sign up as a volunteer and to join the fundraising team. Be sure to tag us in your posts at Pre-Health Shadowing and use the hashtag Pre-Health Shadowing to get reposted on the official Pre-Health Shadowing account. We are active on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. So just make sure, like I said, Pre-Health Shadowing is not a secret. We actually want everybody in the world to know about it. And so help us out, share for share. And last but not least, to get your certificate that verifies your virtual shadowing hours today, you are going to go to our website, www.prehealthshadowing.com, and you're going to find Lizbeth's profile in our website. Once you find that, you're going to click free, take this course, and you will have 30 minutes and 2 tries to get over a 70% on the post-shadowing assessment. The post-shadowing assessment isn't meant to be difficult. It's just to make sure that you were actively paying attention and participating throughout the entire session. So if you were taking good notes, you should do well. Once you pass with 70% or higher, you must return to the original page and click finish course. This is a very crucial step. If you do not click finish course, you will not receive your certificate. So if you are unsure as to why you passed and why your certificate is not popping up, this is the reason. Once you click finish course, your certificate is downloadable immediately and can also be viewed at any time in your profile under the certificates tab. If you guys have any questions or experience any issues, feel free to reach out to us at info@prehealthshadowing.com. Thank you all for joining us today. I hope to see you at our next virtual shadowing session. This marks the end of today's session. I invite you to disconnect from the call.